Welcome to Three Takes. I'm Ishana.
I'm Minali.
I'm Mona.
Three women.
Three generations.
One family, unpacking the questions we all ask.
Hi, everyone. In today's episode, we decided to talk about therapy. That's one of the topics which really touches each generation. And in my time, the therapy was taboo. But today, I'm really delighted that with my daughters, we can talk about therapy openly in the generation, in the time.
So my journey with therapy started in college. I remember coming back from having one of the best semesters of my life of studying abroad in Spain and coming back to undergrad and just really struggling to adjust with relationships with people, figuring out what I want to do in my career. And so that led me to start therapy through the school services that were provided. And that really escalated into continuing to use therapy up until this day. And it's all stemmed around this idea of constant anxiety I have, whether it's my personal life or ruminating over thoughts or just comparing myself in general. And only recently did I get diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, which I think makes a ton of sense looking back in terms of things I've experienced. And my specific therapy that I've focused on is cognitive behavioral therapy, which is focused on how can we better handle some of the thoughts that we deal with and think every day.
For me, I touched on this in our episode 5 rejection episode. I got introduced to therapy in residency during my training after I got rejected from a fellowship training program. And I had a really difficult time concentrating at work and just being present with family and friends. And so I started therapy as a result of anxiety and low self-esteem, more in the work professional setting. But as a result of the way it was affecting my work, it was also affecting my personal life. So I found it really helpful for that period of time to learn skills that essentially built up my self-esteem again, helped me find purpose and meaning at work. And that was for a temporary period of time. And then after a year, I felt like I didn't need therapy on a weekly basis and then sort of tapered off of therapy. But I resumed it again after I was having, actually, like before I was even pregnant, I was having like anxiety even about the possibility of conceiving and like if it would take us long to have kids, and my mind would just wander. And so I started therapy before pregnancy and then also had some prenatal anxiety as well. And I have continued therapy throughout the course of my pregnancy. And I've found it very helpful and grounding because there's so much uncertainty within pregnancy too. You know, you're hoping for happy, healthy babies by the end of it. There's always that level of uncertainty and you don't know how things are going to play out. So I have found immense benefit in having regular therapy sessions during my pregnancy journey.
So for me, therapy is not something I grew up with. Especially in South Asian families, therapy means that something wrong with you. We were taught to push through feelings like anxiety, sadness, or if you're lost, or if you need support, weren't talked about. You just supposed to work harder by yourself. I was fortunate to grow up in a family where we could really talk openly, but sometimes you really need someone other than your family. So growing up, I cannot recall anyone I know or my friends who went to therapy. I started learning about the therapy when I came to USA. And when I came to America, I realized that how at my work and how people are dealing with emotions, how people are reacting and responding, and how they are going for help. So that was the first time I really formally were introduced to therapy.
I guess as someone who hasn't gone to, Mama, like for you specifically, I'd be interested to know your perspective. As someone who hasn't actually gone to therapy, like you've been a big advocate for people. I'm just curious, like what your personal take is on it, because would you yourself actually go to therapy, or do you feel like you're more of just like an advocate and support for it?
I will absolutely go for therapy. So I might not have gone to a professional therapist in general, but I have done some things which I think is a form of therapy. For example, I will tell you, I took a class with Dr. William Sparks as a part of my Talent and Organization Development Graduate Program, the class called Transformational Change class. And I did the many exercise which therapists often ask. So one of the exercise was, we have a mask. In that, I wrote down, what is my outer mask look like? What do I think people perceive me? How do I feel? But inside, what kind of things I have, whether anxiety or other emotions and all of that. That was a more of a therapy kind of thing. And I really cried in that. One of the things which I did, writing my obituary in that class. And actually, I read that my obituary to one of my close friends, and I really cried. Both of us cried. Because that was something, how do I want to live my life? And I am even how I am doing it now, right? So that all is form of therapy. So I'm a big advocate of therapy. And I read a lot on those things for the self-improvement and that. And I don't think so that it is a weakness. It is something, whether it's you girls and others, we are working to strengthen something. Like, it's just, to me, it looks like I take you guys when you were growing up to a tennis coach because you wanted to get better in tennis. Or Minali, you really wanted to get better in speech and debate. So I took to the speech course. To me, therapy is nothing different than that. If my kid want to become better in something and they are working on it, whether it's a therapy, it's a coach, or it's a sports, I'm always a big supporter of that.
So it sounds like you're saying you yourself would go in addition to being an advocate.
Oh, absolutely. I would absolutely go.
It's so interesting. I actually didn't know that in that class you had done the mask exercise, because my first day of therapy, my sophomore, junior year of college, that was also the first exercise I had done. And I also was just bawling and bawling because there was just so much bottled up emotions in terms of how I externally presented myself versus how I internally felt. And it's reassuring, one, to hear that my own mom has also done that exercise and found benefits from it, but that you're able to do these things without actually having to go to a therapist, because a lot of the times people don't have the means to see a therapist, but there are still tools where therapy can be transformative.
And just to clarify, the mask exercise is essentially where you create a mask and you basically draw on the outside how you think people perceive you, and then on the inside how you internally feel about yourself. Is that right?
Yeah, I think in that two ways, how you perceive it or how you pretend.
Yeah.
For example, an outside people might perceive you are so confident, others, but inside you might have anxiety or you are fearful and all of that. So that mask helps you with that, because your inner mask and your outer mask.
I'm curious, Dada, for you, in terms of women navigating career and life changes. I think we have a lot of listeners who also are going through a lot of life changes right now. What was the main learning, or as you've continued therapy, what have been changes or transformations that you've seen amongst yourself?
I think I can break that down and contextualize it. In the times of my life, I felt like I needed therapy. And unlike you, Ishana, which I really admired because you've stayed consistent with therapy, regardless of if you're at a low point or a high point, I've really turned to therapy in periods where I felt like I was in a crisis situation, or I felt like I just wasn't having good control over my life and my thoughts. But I agree, I don't think you need to be in that type of state to still get benefits from therapy. I do think you can get benefits even if you're in a good place and you just want to maintain that. So in any ways, the first time that I did therapy when I was in, I'm going to call a work funk, I learned a couple of tools that I used to help me make my workday more meaningful, because I was just going to work and going through the motions without really caring. And so there'd be times where my therapist helped me identify, okay, take a 10-minute break, go for a walk outside, make your computer password something that brings you joy. Find ways to empower your junior residents. there were very specific strategies and things that we did to help make my day-to-day better. From a pregnancy standpoint, there's a few things, because I think with pregnancy, my mind would just wander so much. And there were like different fears that came with like different phases of the pregnancy. So like one was, are we even going to be able to conceive? Other things are, I hope I don't have a miscarriage. I hope I'm healthy in the pregnancy. I hope my birth experience is okay. I hope the babies will be healthy. These are all like worries and concerns and things that you can really perseverate over. And so one strategy that I learned as I was going through pregnancy, and the therapist I have now is different from the one I had, a couple of years ago, because she's very specialized specifically in women's health and maternal mental health. And so one of the things we learned was just focusing on one trimester at a time, one day at a time. So for me, for example, like I'm in the 3rd trimester at this moment, and like one of the things that I'm afraid of is just the birth experience itself, like childbirth. It's a painful experience. I know it's going to be that. Like, how do I set up myself for success without just getting in my head and feeling super anxious about it? And so one thing we've learned is, okay, let's take it one day at a time. What is the best case scenario? What are my fears about going into it? What are the actual facts I have in front of me? Are there things that have happened in my pregnancy that put me at higher risk or not so much? Like my therapist has been really good about just explaining these are the things you don't know and we won't know those things. But this is how your pregnancy has gone so far. These are actual facts. The ultrasound results have shown your babies are healthy. So take those things at face value. And so I think that's what's been really helpful is just talking it out with someone else. And even if some of my fears are irrational, she helps me see, okay, what are the facts that I have in front of me?
No, I think that's a really good point, Minali. And I think, so you both are vocal about it, sharing your experiences. We also feel that anxiety. We also feel those fear and what if happened. It's just we don't talk about it. The fear of losing a partner, the fear of losing your parents, fear of your kids, like, the marriage life, or, what will happen after retirement, like, your mobility. So those, even to me also, all those thoughts come. So I really work constantly on those things so I don't go to the therapist, as I was saying, but I do, because all the classes and the courses, I constantly do self-development courses where I can, because I know that if I am not good at the mental state, I really cannot, really help others also. So I think I definitely use a lot of tools and forms. And of course, mine is a little bit different. One is called the jolts of joy. Like, I make list of things that brings me happiness, joy, and satisfaction. Like, I think in one of the episode I have mentioned about her, Caroline Miller, Creating Your Best Life. I have written down the 10, I'm working on right now for my 10 goals for year 2026. So those are all, and it has a personal and professional goal both, right? So it really helps those are different tools which also help me with my anxiety, my different thoughts.
Yeah, one of the commonalities I'm thinking of is there's different forms of anxiety, but one of the themes I'm noticing that the three of us are talking about is what our mind is thinking and dealing with rumination and thoughts. And I have the same issue. The type of therapy I actually go to is cognitive behavioral therapy. And for those that maybe don't know, it is really based on how do you control your mind in a way where you can't really control your mind. And that is, to what that you were saying, what is fact and what is not. And there are different cognitive distortions that I have worked with my therapist to identify when there are negative thoughts or ruminating thoughts or just not good things that I'm thinking about. And I open up my notes on my iPhone when sometimes these happen, and I write down exactly what is the emotion that I am feeling and what is the situation. and what is something I can control, what is something I cannot, and how are these different cognitive distortions categorized into them? And then is there something I can do about it, and is there something not? And that has helped me transform myself in the sense of how do I cope with certain situations when very high anxiety arises.
I really like that. That's a great way, in terms of answering this question, how can therapy be transformative? That is such a practical way of just like in the moment, like recognizing what you're feeling, writing it down, like trying to see if there's objective evidence to how you're feeling. And then, like you said, like there are some times where you're going to be able to have some control over it and sometimes you're not. And it's almost coming to a place of acceptance as this is how I'm feeling in the moment. And, this is what I can control or not.
And I think the biggest thing about the therapy, it really helps because you really cannot control what will happen. You don't know what will happen in the future. You cannot control if something is going to happen, but how you're going to cope up with it. If you can apply those techniques and tools during that stress time, your anxiety time and all of them, you can handle things better. The funny thing is that people still don't like to talk about it. I know definitely in my generation, people do not like to talk about at all.
I also want to say that therapy is a hard thing to talk about in general for a lot of people. And so I do think we're very fortunate that the second me and Dada needed help, Mama, we could go to you and Papa and say, like, we need help. And I think the first step is just admitting that help is needed because it can be a silent killer of not asking help and not realizing. And we've seen that happen before. And I think I also have a lot of friends who are resisting believing that therapy can be transformative. And it's really unfortunate, even though I think a lot of people in my generation are very pro therapy. There's so many resources out there. There is this level of me going to therapy somewhat means that I'm a failure, or what can someone really help me with on my issues? And I don't know, it has to come from yourself internally, but I feel sad for those people because it really can be transformative if you allow it.
Ishana, there was many things that resonated with me in what you were saying, and just to highlight a few of those things. So one, just internalizing these thoughts, trying to push through it. I think you're absolutely right in that it can be a silent killer. And I think that's why we have a lot of mental health crises, high rates of suicide, etc. So I do think having an outlet like therapy is really important. And I think another point to emphasize is therapy doesn't have to be you like sitting in front of another person, just spewing your guts out. I think like the way that our mom has done therapy, like she hasn't done it necessarily in a formalized setting, a professional setting like that, but she's still used like some therapy tools to help get her through the day. And like therapy can also come in other forms, right? Like I know people who do like walking meditation and find that therapeutic, like where they don't listen to anything. They're just taking in Mother Nature. I think that's a form of therapy.
Totally. Mm-hmm.
So I think therapy can come in different forms. And then to bring up the point that you had about like people resisting the idea of therapy or seeing it as a weakness and a failure, I do think that there is more and more of a trend, actually, especially in Gen Z, for people to be open about the fact that they go to therapy. But what I like about it, it's not just a trend. It is actually transformative, like you said, if you allow it to be. Like anything, if you go into it being like, oh my God, okay, I'm like forced to be in this therapy session, like I'm not going to get anything out of this, you're probably not going to get anything out of it.
Yeah.
Like you have to be in a certain mindset to be open, to allow yourself to want to change in some way or want to at least be open to the idea of help or a new idea, right?
As you were saying, people need to recognize that there is a pattern, there's some behavior they are also doing. What happens is that you really have to think deeper also, right? Because if you're not going to do it, it's just like I cannot tell you to run marathon if you're not ready for it because you have to prep for it, right?
Yeah.
And the same thing goes with the therapy.
And I think some of this is what we talked about in our feedback episode too, right? Of you have to be willing to accept certain things that you can work on to transform. I mean, I remember over the past year, both of you actually encouraged me to be a little bit more consistent in my therapy because I was breaking down on things typically someone wouldn't, right? Like I was having a breakdown when my flight was getting 2 hours delayed. And like, yes, that's a very frustrating experience, but for me to have a panic attack in the middle of the airport when I always know flying out of New York is difficult, like that was a pattern or behavior that Mama, you had mentioned that you have to recognize, because I also think a thing with therapy is as big as you're trying to transform yourself, it also has an impact on other people and the way that you treat other people. And if I am constantly like having anxious thoughts and being very irritable, that reflects onto the people around me as well.
Yeah.
And also there's a support system. Therapy, as I was saying, that therapy should be supported at home and at work. So for example, you were giving an example of that the flight 2-hour delay, you were getting anxiety. If that time I would have said, oh, Ishana, that always happens to you. You don't know how to deal with anyway. That's how you are. It's going to bring even at lower point, right? So that's the time my responsibility is to tell you, oh, no worry, right? You have to support you, and I have to support Ishana. This is happening again. Maybe ask what does therapy can help you if I cannot help, right? So, and even at work, I think so. The support system has to be there also. You can't put people down for this pattern or behavior. You can be support and ask them to go for help.
And now I think more and more companies are actually including therapy as part of their health benefits.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many people are actually taking advantage or utilizing it, but I do think it's encouraging that more of these mental health resources are being covered by insurance.
Absolutely.
Though not enough. Like, I still feel like we need more.
Yeah, absolutely. I think therapy is not a privilege. It should be the part of just like your regular checkup, because sometimes we don't even know. I think by the sessions, therapy should be just like a normal checkup.
I agree. I think what's important with this question of can therapy be transformative is it's important to realize that everyone has their version of therapy. We've talked about informal versus formal methods, but again, what you said about going on a nature walk, putting your phone down, just having some sort of an outlet is a form of therapy as well that can have the same benefits as going in person to talking to one as well.
I think a lot of it too, Ishana, is like some people just don't want to make the time for it. And I always think there's like a little bit of time in your day you can incorporate it in some way, right? Like even if it's just for like 4 or 5 minutes, if it's like an exercise, like you do like as you're commuting from somewhere. I don't think we can fall back on I'm too busy, I can't make time to incorporate therapy or some sort of self-reflective practice in the day.
Agreed.
And I think it's really not a weakness at all. I think a lot of times people started feeling low about themselves while doing. I think really therapy can help with the more structured reflection and thoughts, which you are not able to name it.
Mama, do you have any tips in terms of, as a parent with children who go to therapy or are needing therapy, how do you support your kids, and also how do you navigate the stigma that still sometimes exists?
So I have started, of course, I don't bring it up like all the time. If there's some topic comes about some things, I say in a very normal way, oh, my kids go to therapist and all of them. Actually, I remember the first time I have told somebody, she said, oh, really? Even Minali can go, but I thought she has done this and all of them. I said, no, my daughter is just like any other kid. She also have her struggles, her pains and all of that. And, she's going for a therapist. So I think talking in a normal way, they are just like, as I was saying, that taking you to the tournament or going to the coach, I think having in a normal conversation with the parents. But I know that it's a lot of effort, especially South Asian parents are not very open to talk about. To me, it looks like, do you think this is your kid's weakness? Why there is so much hiding? Because it puts, again, pressure on the kids because of the parents. They cannot talk openly to their friends because they're always worried the parents are going to say that, because parents want it like shush, like, kind of thing. So I think the more you encourage kids to talk to each other or the parents talk and make it a normal. And this is nothing to putting you down. There is nothing abnormality in that.
Yeah, like it almost seems like sometimes like parents see their kids going to therapy as a reflection of them not being good parents or them not, or in some way reflecting bad on them, which I don't think it has anything to do with that.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. And actually, to be very honest, I learned about therapy from you both a lot because the tools, some of them you guys are using, even I can apply and learn from that, right? So it's because we all have those things, those anxieties, those fear, we admit or not. It's just, are we willing to talk about? Are we willing to share that what has worked for them? And can they share something? What have they used?
And also to assume like, oh, Minali goes to therapy and like Ishana sure would go to therapy.
I was like, is anyone going to discuss how like people can expect me to, but not...
No.
Okay.
No. Actually, no. I told about you too. Like, I think in general, people is oh, really? Like, to be very honest, they said, oh, Minali Shana goes that. Why? Like, why means why? Because they do have those normal emotions and the feelings, and they are just want to learn how to handle better and cope up better with that. It's a very normal thing. You know, you don't want things to be too late and regret in life. That you really don't want. I can talk about myself. I never want my kids or anybody else to feel so lonely that they cannot share things with their best friends because there is a stigma or that loneliness. I don't want anybody to be so late that later on they think, I wish I would have supported and I have done. So in order to build that, I think it is really important that we are open about and honest about it.
Yeah, maybe we should get into our takeaways at this point.
I think my takeaway is I think I always find comfort talking to both of you about some of the things I deal with, and I'm grateful to always have support. I think from a listener perspective, I just continue to encourage anyone, no matter what is going on in your life, good or bad, to just try it and give it some time, because I do believe the question of how can therapy be transformative is a question everyone can answer in a positive way.
I think one of the takeaway from hearing from all of you, because you have used in different aspects of there, that therapy is a part of everyday self-care.
And I think for me, it's thinking about parenting and, you know, the future ahead for Rahul and I, it's how can we create an environment for our kids where there's open communication, like Mama, you and Papa have done for us, even apart from just open communication where we can share our struggles and our feelings with you guys, also being open to the idea of when your kid might need external help and being supportive in that and not judgmental. And so I think that's what I'm going to take moving forward.
Thanks for joining us on 3 Takes. If something we shared sparked a new thought or opened up a convo with someone you love, we'd love to hear about it. DM us on Instagram at 3.takes, email us at connect@3takes.com, or visit us at www.3takes.com. And if this episode meant something to you, share it with another mother, daughter, or sister in your life. It's how we grow and how the stories keep moving.